Thank you, everybody, for coming to the Aaron Torres Podcast YouTube page. If you could do me a quick favor, see that little subscribe button at the bottom of your screen? Go ahead, click that subscribe button. Really does help our channel grow, our audience grow, and I really do appreciate it more than you know. So click that subscribe button. Appreciate your support. Now, here's the video that you came here for. Were a couple of very interesting pieces of news over the course of the weekend, including, frankly, one of the biggest difference makers that is still available in the portal, PJ Haggerty, okay? So PJ Haggerty, when he entered the portal, we had plenty of conversations about that guy because of basically who he is, but also, let's be honest, what he was asking for when he entered the portal, okay? So long story short, PJ Haggerty, 6 foot, 6 foot probably 2, 6'3" guard, played at Memphis this past year, played at Tulsa the year before, and to his credit, second, third team All-American, depending on the recruiting service. And what we said at the time, does one thing very well. He puts the ball in the freaking basket. 22 points a game, 6 rebounds per game, which is incredible for a guard his size, about 4 assists, was second in the country in most free throw attempts, 36% three-point shooting, okay? So he's a really good player, very good player. What became interesting, though, when he officially entered the portal was the report that came out via Jeff Goodman about what some of the demands were for his commitment. The first one, remember, JT Toppin, Big 12 Player of the Year, played this past season at Texas Tech. There was a report that he got about $4 million to return to Texas Tech. So PJ Haggerty sat there and said, well, wait a second, JT Toppin, second, third team All-American. I'm a second, third team All-American. The report was that he was asking for $4 million in NIL money. Beyond that, and this is where it got interesting, he was telling teams that he expected to be a point guard at his next stop. Why that is interesting is pretty straightforward. He really isn't a point guard. Now, he can make plays with the ball in his hands, but his best attribute is getting himself points, not necessarily setting up other people. And so I said at the time, he's a really good player. I said, and by the way, I think somebody will be interested in him, but I think there's probably going to be, like in any negotiation, there's going to be some push, pull, some give, take. I said, I think he's probably going to get maybe not 4, but he'll get a nice little sizable chunk of cash. But then counter to that, like, he's not coming in to just take over your offense and run it. Well, I bring it up because there were several different reports on his recruitment. Now, it is worth noting, he has entered the NBA draft. He has been invited to the NBA draft combine, so we'll see if that impacts things. But the biggest report that I saw over the weekend was from Jamie Shaw of On3. Jamie Shaw of On3 is a recruiting writer, and he put in a crystal ball late on Friday that he expects PJ Haggerty to commit to Will Wade and the NC State Wolfpack. By the way, Jeff Goodman had his own report, first saying that it was down to NC State and Ole Miss. Then Jeff Goodman said, this is interesting. Ole Miss is out of the PJ Haggerty sweepstakes. Told by one source, Ole Miss never actually spoke to Haggerty through the process. NC State certainly appears to be a front runner. So I want to dive into a potential fit with PJ Haggerty and NC State, but I want to do the caveat that I always do when we talk portal stuff. This stuff, is always subject to change. Now, in the case of PJ Haggerty, I don't think that he'll necessarily commit somewhere else, but I will tell you, talk to somebody this weekend. I don't think NC State feels like it's 100% done. I don't know that anybody ever feels like anything is 100% done in this portal era. They certainly feel good. So there's a couple variables. By the time you see this video, he could commit. Also, the opposite could be true as well. Because he's going through the NBA draft process, this could take a while. But I do believe that NC State is in the driver's seat. And I'll tell you this, we just updated our way too early top 25. If PJ Haggerty lands at NC State, I believe that they are right around a top 25 team going into next year. And I believe they are right behind Louisville and Duke in my as far as teams that are the best teams in the ACC, assuming that they, of course, do land PJ Haggerty and that he ends up coming to NC State. First of all, I'll say this. It's funny, being a national guy, listen, sometimes just you can't keep track of everything, okay? And I guess there has been a little bit of talk this offseason of like, some people, I guess, apparently were expecting more out of Will Wade. Now, we're going to get to the roster and the pieces that he's got committed in a minute. But I do think it's been interesting. I think NC State fans early on were kind of wondering, where's the big boom? Where's the big commitment that's going to rock the internet? It hasn't really happened yet. Doesn't mean it's not going to. And I also think some of it's other fan bases that are just like, not wanting NC State to succeed. But I bring it up because they haven't had that boom yet. But I don't think because they've had that major commit that makes waves across college basketball, it doesn't mean they don't have a very good team, okay? First of all, I really like some of the pieces that they've added. Trey Hollowman, guard out of Michigan State. He's a guy that I think kind of fell through the cracks. They had a fourth-year starter at point guard in Jaden Akins. They had, obviously, Richardson, Jace Richardson, who, of course, is Jason Richardson's son. And so I just bring it up because I think because you have the son of a program legend and a fourth-year senior at point guard, it's easy for other guys to get lost in the shuffle. Trey Hollowman's a very good player. Just under 9 points, just under 10 points per game, about 3.5 assists per game. I'll tell you what, he's tough as nails too. I don't know if you remember, but on senior day at Michigan State, some of the seniors were being, welcomed off the floor. Basically, Michigan State was about to win. They're hugging Tom Izzo. They're hugging their teammates, etc. But it was during the game. There was about 10, 12, 15 seconds left. There's a couple Michigan players standing on the logo. Well, Trey Hollowman did not take kindly to that. He basically picked a fight, okay? And so I'm just sitting there saying, because he is the kind of guy you want in your corner. I'll tell you this, I remember I actually was at one of his first ever college games. He and Michigan State played one of those aircraft carrier games in, I guess it would have been the fall of 2022, so the 2022-2023 season. It was Michigan State versus Gonzaga. This kid comes off the bench, ton of energy. I love him, but he is officially committed. Also, other noteworthy commitments. Again, none of these are crazy standout guys, but I think all the pieces fit if you include PJ Haggerty. Terrence Arsenault was part of Houston's national title runner-up in San Antonio this past year. He was a kid that was a former, really highly rated recruit. I think a lot of people thought he could be a one and done. Gets hurt his sophomore year, a little bit of a slow comeback. But I'll tell you this, I know the NC State people love him. And I think when they see him, when you get him at full strength, I do think it completely changes the dynamics of that team and of who he is as a player. Again, 6'8". Most people thought he could be a one and done, but certainly a two and done, then gets hurt his sophomore year, is good at Houston this past year, not great. And I do think he's one of those guys that I think probably maybe a fresh start is just right for him. 3 years at Houston doesn't really work out, whatever. The other one that certainly caught people's attention over the course of the weekend, and I'm sorry if I butcher this name, Paul Mbaya, I believe is how you pronounce his name, originally from Africa, played overseas. Listen, we've seen that influx of foreign players, European players, African players, et cetera, coming to college basketball over the last couple of years, and it feels like this offseason is certainly the offseason where just everybody's all in on the foreign players. But this kid is projected as a second-round pick, originally from the Democratic Republic of Congo, played in France over the last couple seasons. And I bring it up because there are mock drafts where he is a projected second-round pick this year, and he committed to NC State over the course of the weekend. So you have your starting point guard in Trey Hollowman. You have a very good wing in Terrence Arsenault. You have Paul Mbaya, 7 foot at center from the Democratic Republic of Congo. I will say, though, you do need that dude. By the way, Allen Breen, Kadar Copeland, both two players that followed Will Wade from McNeese State that were both really good there. But you do need that star. But like I said, if you get PJ Haggerty, it's game on, because PJ Haggerty to me is the guy that fills that void of, 18, 19 point per game guy, the guy that can get you a bucket when you need it. And I actually like how he fits with those other pieces. Now, I know what everyone's going to say. Well, Trey Hollowman's a point guard. You just said it. What does that mean for PJ Haggerty? Listen, I thought that that request by him was a little bit overrated because most teams play more than one guard on the ball at any given time in any given game. And what I mean by that is that, yes, there is somebody that technically walks the ball up the floor, but we all watch basketball. And I'm not going to claim to be X's and O's guy. But it's like we know that, you put the ball in a guy's hands and let him go make plays, and he's not necessarily the point guard, but he has the ball in his hands. And so I don't really worry about the fit with Trey Hollowman. I think that PJ Haggerty would actually be awesome at NC State. And the one thing I'll say, NC State fans, I don't think it's very many of you that are worried about Will Wade. Do not worry about Will Wade, okay? One thing about Will Wade, I was thinking about this. So this guy's been a head coach since he got to LSU. He got to LSU in what, like 2017, 2018? Outside of his first season at LSU, when there was no transfer portal, when everybody that transferred had to sit out for a year, every single year that Will Wade has coached since then, he has had a team that's good enough to win its conference in any given season, okay? Go back to McNeese the last 2 years, historic seasons at McNeese. And then you go back to the LSU thing. By the way, year one, even in a year where he didn't have a great team, he still signed Tremont Waters, 5-star. I believe he was a McDonald's All-American, and still signed him. So don't worry about Will Wade. He is going to be fine. But certainly PJ Haggerty would be the Sunday on top of the ice cream sundae. And the good thing I will say is this, is I know I mentioned that he is going to the NBA draft combine. I don't think he's an NBA player, at least not after this year, with due respect. And PJ Haggerty is doing stuff at a level that I never have, never will, etc. But there are a lot of 6'2", 6'3" guys that can get to the rim in the NBA. And I don't know that he has NBA size, but I think he's one of those guys that can be a great college point guard, even if he isn't a great NBA prospect right now. I think when it's all said and done, he ends up at NC State, and game on at that point. I think NC State would be in my top 25 at that point, and I think they would be right behind Louisville and Duke in the ACC.